quite a few people have showed up now after lunch. My name is Monika, and I come from Tartu, Tartu University, which is in Estonia, highlighted there in orange. There's some other speakers from there. I also like to say that Tartu University is one of the best in our region, and you're all welcome to come and visit us. Mm-hmm. Okay, so my talk is a bit different from the previous one, and I will be talking about Y chromosome in the use of population genetics. It will be a very broad overview. So first a bit of introduction and of the methods and Y chromosome, and then a few of the results that we have got in where I have been involved. And then let's see over time how many I get through. Okay. Okay. So yes, Y chromosome, and I am studying the DNA of the living fetus, the modern Y chromosome. I'm not going to talk about today about the ancient DNA, just as you're aware. And just very briefly, I run through the methods that are used for the analysis, so we can test the change of the frequency of the lineages through time, so looking in the population dynamics, and this can reveal bottlenecks or founder events which both reduce the original diversity of the genetic diversity. Also, very often you see frequencies of lineages plotted on the map, and of course phylogenetic trees, which are our workhorse, and you will see a lot of trees today, maybe just a warning. And the phylogenetic tree, of course, shows the relationship of those lineages to each other. And few reminders about Y chromosome. So many of you maybe are working in the autosome or in the whole genome, but Y chromosome is often not looked at all, or people just excluded from their analysis for particular reasons, of course. But it is the smallest of the chromosomes. It is found only in the males, and it is about 60 million base pairs long, which makes about 2% of the whole genome. And Y chromosome has some very specific features. So for most part, Y chromosome does not recombine. So similarly to previously shown mitochondrial picture, Y chromosome is passed down through one parental line, so Y chromosome through fathers to their sons, forming a male lineage. And mutations accumulate sequentially through time. And this allows us to reconstruct the phylogenetic tree. And the phylogenetic tree of Y chromosome of all men in the world, so you can imagine that all men in the world is put in one big Y chromosome phylogenetic tree, and this would be the true genealogical tree because of those features. And on this tree, we want to call or label those lineages, and they have been named haplogroups, but also called as lineages or clusters or clades. And those are monophyletic clusters given an alphanumeric indicator. And and it goes from alphabetically starting from A up to R. Actually, S is also there. And sometimes this naming of the lineages can be quite confusing. But I'm not going to go into the nomenclature discussion at the moment. So one way of showing the lineage is giving alternating letter and number combinations, where at each split a new either letter or number is then added. And this can become very long. But another way is to show just the main couple of letters and then add the marker, diagnostic marker name to that. This is just to a little bit background because it is sometimes not so obvious. The Y chromosome diversity in the world has been studied already for decades, and deliberately here is a quite old picture which used to be at least in Wikipedia, the one on the right. And this is showing these different clades or their distribution in the world. And one distinct thing that was already established early was that African lineages come from the deepest splits of the human Y chromosome. So again, confirming the out of Africa theory, and that all are Eurasian and Oceanian lineages are just a subset within Africa. And then there are several ways of studying Y chromosome. Of course, you all know about genotyping and sequencing. Earlier studies are all done with genotyping, where informative diagnostic markers were typed as much as was known at the time, and thus the phylogeny was formed, but it could have polytropes which could not be resolved with that number of markers. Whereas now, when we have the sequencing available, the resolution is much higher, and this is actually a true tree underneath. And we can also add the number of mutations on each of those branches, and when combined with mutation rate, we can have a time-resolved phylogeny. So we would know when, or kind of estimate, when these splits happen. So one thing to say about Y chromosome sequencing today is that with most available short-read sequencing, we can access about 10 megabases of the whole 60 megabases of Y chromosome. And just that you know, but this is well enough information and lots of data to work with. So all the rest of the results are based on about 10 megabases, a little bit less usually. And then to some of the results that we have got in some past years, first about phylogeny and some of the population dynamics. And it was in 2016 when David Bodnik published a paper on the 1,000 genomes samples Y chromosomes. Because this is a public repository, then it's very important. And this tree showed exactly what was known before, that deepest splits, or the lineages which are coming from the deepest splits are in Africa, and the rest of the Eurasia and Oceania is just a subclade. And we did also the distribution of those samples, so from where the samples were collected. And you can see that some of the regions in the world are not so well covered or not covered at all in that database, and also that some of the lineages are much more prevalent among this database. Here, the triangle is proportional to the number of samples within the triangle, so the wider it is, the more individuals there are. So we did a year prior to that somewhat similar study covering the globe and 128 populations, and there it was also aimed at some of the populations that were known not to be in those public repositories would be included. And we were able to sequence 8.8 megabases at that time, and you can see the distribution of the samples here. Of course, also some of those were already published at the time. And I guess one important difference was that we also had some samples from the island Southeast Asia and near Oceania, and of course some other regions. And so now I'm going to just very briefly introduce this tree again. So this is the global Y chromosome tree. And we were able to root the tree with the lineage named A00. So this is the oldest lineage known, and that put the most recent common ancestor of the whole Y chromosome tree to about 250,000 years ago. Confidence intervals you see are pretty wide, but and also again we see that so red here denotes Africa, and then somehow the color code has gone missing from this slide. And the other regions are also colored by their prevalence. And one of the very distinct features also, among others, is that there is a very short interval of time when the lineages which are present outside of Africa, so in Eurasia and Oceania, when these lineages differentiate. From this analysis, we could say that it was about 47 to 52,000 years ago. And another feature is that very many of the common lineages among populations today, they have gone through an expansion somewhere around 15,000 years ago. So this is the time when the climate improved after the last glacial maximum. And these are there are other important key features here also, but I'm just gonna not talk about them here. But another thing that we could do with this sequences was estimation of the effective population size. And very simplified, it is to say that the effective population size is the number of those individuals who effectively participate in producing the next generation. So it is not all the time that, or most of the time, the census and the effective population size are not the same. And here there is depicted the equal number, it's just a cartoon, equal number of men and females, and just most of the females are having children, and most of the men are not on this particular picture, just to very to illustrate this, how the effective population size can differ from the actual population size. And what we could do is take those Y chromosome sequences from and analyze the effective population size. And also was shown here before that it is called the Bayesian skyline plot, where time goes horizontally and the effective population size is on the vertical axis. And it is all based on the same phylogeny, underlying phylogeny. And this is also depicted up here. And just there are these lines show the 50,000 years line and 10,000 years ago line, just as a marker. And on this plot, it is called the cumulative patient scaling plot. So from all those different regions, they were separated, and then we can see that, and this is the male effective population size, so we can see that it increases, and then at some point there is a very, very strong drop in this effective population size, and after that it starts to increase again. And because we were able to also take the mitochondrial sequences from these exactly the same individuals whose Y chromosomes were used for this analysis, and just to compare, then this is the mitochondrial picture. It's the same, time goes here, this is the size of the effective population, and there is no similar drop of effective population size in the mitochondrial DNA. And this puzzled people pretty a long time, but what could it be? Because this is not region specific, this paternal just of effective population size or a great bottleneck there. And it is also not lineage specific, and we don't see it in the maternal lineages. And then when we looked at it a bit more closer, it could be seen that the actual onset of the bottleneck in those different regions was not exactly at the same time, but a bit, it started a bit different time in different places, but in this interval of 8 to 4,000 years ago. And then because it also followed the kind of the Neolithic revolution in this way, that this bottleneck was seen in those populations where Neolithic revolution was already gone through, where Neolithic practices had been established well. And therefore we hypothesized that it could be some kind of a cultural effect on the male lineages. Something that accumulation of wealth, for example, could be visioned as causing some male lineages to be more productive than the others, which is something that has to be also passed down on the paternal line. And another interesting aspect is if to compare the actual effective population sizes of females and males, because here the scales are different. So here on this plot, they have been overlaid on top of each other, and the male effective population size is constantly much more smaller. So in human populations of this, seen through the mitochondrial and Y chromosome perspective, there has always been much more women in this effective population. And at the time of the bottleneck, the difference is about 17 times. So taking all this together, this hypothesis of cultural effect is that somewhere there was a rise of agriculture, somewhere between 8 and 12,000 years ago, and humans started to raise and grow food, and then wealth accumulated into, or the accumulation of wealth was equal, and then at some point later, and so on this picture the effective population sizes have been depicted a bit differently, so this would be the graph for females and this for men, and then somewhere there was a very great reduction of male lineages. Well, this is a bit of a promotional picture here, so it was promoted as survival of the wealthy. But actually there are very many different cultural effects which could be reconstructed and dated the global Y chromosome phylogeny, we could show that there was a rapid expansion of Eurasian and Oceanian lineages around 47 to 52,000 years ago, and that many common haplogroups which today are common, they all started their expansion about 15,000 years ago, and that there was a severe bottleneck 8 to 4,000 years ago of male affected population size. And then this is kind of establishing the whole Y chromosome tree globally, but if you remember, there were some regions which were not so well covered with samples, especially samples in public repositories, but also in our data set, there were just few samples from either Southeast Asia and near Oceania. So this is another study which tried to then fill this gap, because this region today is a very culturally very rich region, and also there very many people live there today. But the paternal lineages were very not yet studied to the same level as other regions of the world. And here are just some facts about there are very many languages spoken in this region today. And also historically, this is one of the regions that was already populated by the first migration, or the main migration that reached out of Africa. So first, this is now about archaeological findings. There are in Australia about 55,000 years ago, and here in this archipelago 43,000 years ago. And then later, another great migration story in the human history, the Austronesian expansion of Austronesian languages, and then these have been the dates. So this is during the Holocene, much later, so starting from here and then going in different directions. And in this region of our interest, it's reaching for 3,500 years ago, also to the eastern fringes of Papua New Guinea. Also, this region is very interesting because the climate and geography has changed. The geography, physical geography has changed there a lot. So during the last glacial or the glacial periods, when water was stored in ice, the sea level in this region was much lower than it is today, and therefore these continents of Sunda and Sahul formed. But important in between them, there were these Oceania Islands and Philippines, which always stay insular because they are separated by very deep sea trenches. And then when climate started to warm up, about 18,000 years ago, sea levels started to grow, and the geography here, physical geography, started to change. And it was about 8.5 kilometers ago that it has been estimated that this island, as we know it today, here, different islands, for the land bridge between Australia and New Guinea also was submerged underwater. So the data set that we were able to collect was about 337 men from this region, and this was supplemented by individuals from the neighboring regions, just to give, and also from the global phylogeny, just to give a context to the few men from this region. And at this study, in this study, we were able to sequence 9.7 megabases, and it was combining different sequencing platforms and methods. So this is the same global phylogeny actually that you saw before, but now it has been put into circular form. So haplogroup A was these were the deep African lineages, B, and then everything that has been highlighted here in yellow is the lineages from the island Southeast Asia, the area of Oceania. And then I'm going to skip lots of slides and go further. I wonder, or maybe I should flip that through. I just note here that so haplogroup C, N, and S are very, some of their sublineages are very typical to this region, and then there are some subgroups of haplogroup O which are also found in this region. And when we look in this time slices into this region, then I'm going to go through this quickly because this is cool. But again, we saw that 50 to 40,000 years ago, there is this great diversification of lineages among those local autochthonous lineages, especially. But then, what we see is a long pause in the diversification. So these would be those lineages. So you see this very long sticks there. Whereas in other, for example, haplogroup O already has a different branching pattern. And then later, it is just about 25 to 15,000 years ago when the local lineages start to diverge. But then in the Holocene and 15 to 10,000 years ago, also the local lineages go through a great expansion. And one more thing that could be seen from such analysis is that these are the these brownish colors. They are colors sequences from our lineages from Papua New Guinea and Bismarck archipelago. And we saw that lots of those new lineages that we were able to discover are coming from there. And this is just very skeletal here. And it points out that some of those are very long mix between Australia and Papua New Guinea. And this is something that has been argued for long in Uniparental, that Australia and Papua New Guinea have been separated from the very initial migrations. Unfortunately, here and in general, there is very, very few data from Australia available. There is only 13 samples. But we were nevertheless, this was a surprise actually. And this is very just based on literally on a couple of guys, like 3 guys from Australia. But what we see is that there are coalescences where Australian men from Australia, which are green here, are coalescing with within the larger Papua New Guinea diversity. And of course, this is based on the data that we have at the moment, so it would be interesting to have more sampling on both sides. But at least we see that there has been some kind of connection between those regions. And yes, these are the conclusions from that study, that initial great diversification of the lineages which are autochthonous to this region, and then as a comparison to haplogroup O, which mainly developed in East Asia, then started to diversify later. All the major branches arose, but here they arose here, but there was a long isolation period, and which was followed by then diversification, and then an explosion of activity. Also during the time, if you remember, when the great floods changed the environment there, and what we also could see was that lots of the lineages that are related to Austronesian speakers are coalescing 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, which is in concordance with the previous results. And I guess now I have finished. So I'm gonna. Yes. I just skipped into the acknowledgements because, as was said before, we can't do this kind of job alone, and this is definitely not what has been done by me. I've always been very, very, very lucky to be surrounded by great people, and I especially would like to thank Professor Thomas Music there and Mike Westborough, Mari Cox for the Southeast Asian, and Mari Cox report from the Southeast Asian and background study, and Professor Richard Williams is with us all the time. But in this Y chromosome world, we just could not go without seeing because she just knows everything. And thank you all for listening. And I might take questions later. This is when we left Estonia. Just put your box. So,
any questions you want to?
You mean this is a much longer evolutionary period, but and we don't see this happening in this period that we are looking at the moment. So in this sense, it does not affect this result.
There was a 2021 paper by Hallers where they said that the non-African Y chromosomes eventually all have Southeast Asian origin. So what do you have to say about that?
I think in that paper they argued that this very well. So it is kind of in a way also coming back to this half region. It was discussed with a bit different context before, but in that paper they argued, and I think it was a solid argument.
I just asked one question. Excellent talk, Monika. I was just wondering, the survival of the wealthiest, couldn't you think of arrival of the fittest, or probably survival of the healthiest in this particular haplogroups? Couldn't that be a better paradigm?
The survival of the wealthiest in a way would, at least we argue, that it would somehow need to be a lineage specific, or then yes, indeed, it has to be in something absolutely different that we don't see in Y chromosome. It is not related to Y chromosome, but because the bottleneck is very severe in Y chromosome, and in a way it has to be something that is kept through the generations. And because it's not happening exactly at the same time everywhere, so it's not like a very great catastrophe that would wipe out lots of men, or I don't know, extraterrestrials stealing men at very specific points. But it was mostly argued based on the sequence of the timing of the beginning of this bottleneck. But there are other options or culturally inherited possibilities that would affect this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karmin. It's really an informative talk.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karmin, for such an interesting talk and for making the explanation so effortless. I would like to now call upon the stage Dr. Lalzin to award the memento to Dr. Karmin.
Now we are having third speaker, Dr. Ashish Jha, an assistant professor from New York University in Abu Dhabi, where he leads the genetic heritage group. Ashish grew up in Kathmandu, Nepal, where he completed his high school. He received his BA in molecular and cellular biology from University of California in 2007, PhD in human genetics from the University of